you all are doing well. Welcome back. And if you're new here, my name is Alexis. So before I get into today's video, I just want to talk about a giveaway. So I will be doing my very first giveaway to celebrate reaching 1,000 subscribers. It's just my way of saying thank you. So one lucky winner will win a $100 gift card for Fig Scrubs. So Fig Scrubs are really nice. A lot of my coworkers wear them. And they're pretty expensive, so I think a free gift card worth $100 is a very good deal. I don't even have Fig Scrubs, so you'll be having nicer scrubs than me. So in order to win, you have to, of course, be subscribed to my channel. You have to like this video, follow me on Instagram, and I also want you to leave a comment down below this video letting me know why you want to be a nurse, or why you love nursing, or what unit you want to work on. Also, leave your Instagram username in your comment too so that I can DM you on Instagram to let you know if you've won. So when I DM you, I will ask you for your email address so that I can send you the gift card. December is right around the corner, which means a lot of people will be graduating from nursing school and applying for their very first nursing job. So because of that, I will be doing a video today to talk about how I prepared for my nursing interviews and common interview questions for new grad nurses. So I already have a video about my 10 tips to help you land your first nursing job, and I think they're pretty good tips, so I'm going to link that video down below. But now I'm going to go a little more into detail about how I prepared for my interviews and just common questions that you can use to help you prepare for your interviews. I had my very first interview in February of 2018, and then I had my second one of March of 2018. And then I graduated in May, and about 2 or 3 weeks later I had my third and final interview, and that was a job that I accepted the offer, and that's where I work now today. Alright, so let's go ahead and talk about the ways that I prepared for my interviews. Whenever I applied to a job and I found out that I had an upcoming interview, I would pull out my handy dandy notebook and write a little bit of information about the hospital. So at the top of the page I would write the name of the hospital and its location. And then I will also write things like its ranking in the state or within the country, and I will write down whether or not it was a magnet hospital. So then I would go to the hospital's website and I would look up their mission statement and values. So it's important to know these things because in the interview, they just might ask you if you know their mission statement. So I remember when I was interviewing for my tech position on the double ICU floor, the interviewer actually asked me if I knew the mission statement, and luckily for me, I looked it up before the interview, so I was able to tell her exactly what it was, and she was so excited that I knew it, and I ended up getting the job. So keep that in mind. It's important to know the mission statement and values. In addition to learning about the hospital, you also want to learn about the unit that you're applying to. So a lot of jobs that I applied to were for the NICU. So if I went to the hospital's website, I would also look up their NICU's page. And then I would write down things like, is it a level 3 NICU, is it a level 4 NICU, and then I also look up the services that they offer. So for this hospital, it was a level 3 NICU, so I wrote that down, and it had 150 beds, so I wrote that down too. I also wrote down the different services that they offered, so this one has nitric oxide therapy, speech therapy, surfactant therapy, and just things like that. So you just want to learn as much as you can about the hospital and the unit before your interview, because it shows that you care, that you've done your homework, and that you're actually excited to learn more about them. Another way to prepare for your interview is to do mock interviews. So you can ask your friend or family member or whoever to ask you questions, and then you will answer those questions as if you were in the interview. Practice makes perfect, and this also helps you to get an idea of what you should and shouldn't say during the interview. Another great way to prepare would be to write down all of your experiences in different conditions that you saw during nursing school clinicals. So if I was interviewing for a NICU, I would write down some of my experiences that I had during my 6-week preceptorship during the NICU. So I write down different things that I would see, like patients with PPHN or HIE. I would write down things that I did like hill sticks or lab draws, just to remind myself of my different experiences. It's also great to write down different experiences that you've had with certain patients on other units, even if it's not related to the unit that you're applying to. So I would apply to the NICU, but I would also write down different things that I saw in nursing school, such as my patients with like Wilms tumor, dementia, or things like that, even though I would not see that in a NICU because they might ask me a question that has nothing to do with the NICU where I'm interviewing, but it may relate to something that I saw on a different unit, and those experiences may be a better way to answer the question. So writing down your experiences in different conditions that you've seen with patients It's just a great way to keep a refresher in your mind in case you can answer a question with those experiences. The next way that I would prepare for my interviews would be to write down questions that I want to ask at the very end of the interview. At the end of the interview, they will usually ask you if you have any questions for them. It's very important that you ask them questions, okay? You don't work there, so you obviously don't know everything, and you're probably going to be curious about something, so make sure you ask them questions. So now I'm going to go through a few questions that I would usually ask at the end of my interview. One great question that I will always ask would be, can you tell me a little bit more about the orientation process and what it consists of? So this way you'll know how long orientation lasts and what exactly you may be doing during orientation. If you're doing a new grad residency program, it's also great to ask them about that. So that way you'll know, once again, how long it lasts and what they expect from you. Another great question would be for you to ask them about the scheduling requirements. So do you have to rotate shifts and do day shift versus night shift? Do they have a certain number of weekend requirements that you have to work? That's always a great question, a good thing to know. I would also always ask them about education and certification requirements. So this is going to depend on what unit you're applying to, but it's important to ask them if you need to have your BLS, NRP, ACLS, or PALS, something like that. So that way you'll know if you need to go ahead and get that done, or if they will help you get them. You can also ask them if the hospital provides tuition reimbursement in case you want to go back to school, and you can also ask them if you are required to join committees on your unit and be very involved. Alright, so now let's go into some of the common questions that they may ask new grads during the interview process. As a new grad nurse with no experience, they're more than likely to ask you behavioral-based questions. So these are questions when they say things like, tell me about a time when blank. So it's very great for you to think about your experiences during nursing school, clinical, or even just your experiences whenever you had a job in the past, like even if it was your first job as a cashier when you were like 16. So now let's go over some of the questions that I have written in my notebook. What I would like to do is just get out my notebook and I would Google common interview questions for new grad nurses, and then I would just write them down, and then I would jot some notes underneath it as to help me think of ways that I can answer the question. So even after you finish watching this video, I recommend that you Google common new grad nurse interview questions, because there are hundreds and hundreds of questions out there. So obviously you don't want to have to go through all the hundreds of questions, but just pick a few and write them down in a notebook, and then think about how you can answer those questions and write down your answers to it. You don't have to write full sentences, just write like a few notes or bullet points underneath it to help you get an idea of what you would say if they asked you that question. So before we get into those behavioral-based questions, let's first just talk about some general questions. So they may start off by saying, tell me about yourself. So this is a question that I really hate because I never really know what to say. But in my notes I have things written down. So I would say that I went to Duke University where I majored in biology. And then I realized that I actually wanted to be a nurse, so I went to nursing school at the Medical University of South Carolina. And then you can just talk about some of your strengths, and then also just show them that you're a human. You can talk about fun things, like I also like to go hiking, or I like to spend a lot of time with my friends and family, stuff like that. Next question. Where do you see yourself in 5 years? So this is always a great question. I have written down that I would see myself as an experienced nurse, someone that's a little more involved with helping new grad nurses, and possibly starting to go back to school to possibly become a nurse practitioner. So whatever you see yourself doing in 5 years, just make sure you can tie it to the current job and let them know that you're passionate about it and that you have goals already set. Sometimes they may throw you curveballs and ask you something like, why shouldn't we hire you? So for this question, you don't want to talk down on yourself. You want to spin it into a positive way. So if they say, why shouldn't we hire you? You can say something like, you shouldn't hire me if you want someone that just follows all orders and doesn't question things even when they seem off. You shouldn't hire me if you don't want someone that thinks outside of the box, something like that. As a nurse, you're going to have orders put in by the doctors, and it's your job to look over those orders, and if you notice something is wrong, you have to let the provider know. If you just follow those orders, even if it looks incorrect or dangerous, that's on you. So by saying that you shouldn't hire me if you want someone that simply follows orders and doesn't question anything, it shows that you pay attention to detail and that your patient's safety is your first priority. So however you answer this question, just make sure you put a positive spin on it. They may also ask you the opposite question, why should we hire you? So of course you just want to talk about your strengths and talk about how you're passionate about being a nurse and stuff like that. Just make yourself sound good. You have to sell yourself. They may ask you, why do you want to be a nurse? So of course everyone wants to say, oh, I just love to help people, I love nursing, but you really need to go into more detail about that. So my example would be that I had a little cousin who was born, and he was in the NICU for a few days, and when I was in middle school I got to go visit him and I thought it was really cool. So that really sparked my interest in it. Also, I just love learning about the human body, and I love all the technology that comes along with nursing. So give them whatever your reason is, but just make sure you have an answer. They may even ask you why you want to work at their hospital. So let's say you applied to the Medical University of South Carolina, which is where I went to school and did my nursing school clinicals. So they may say, why MUSC? So this goes back to my first tip about writing down a little bit about the hospital and the unit. So if you do your research and your homework, you'll know a little bit about the hospital. So you can say something like, I know this hospital is a magnet hospital, has a great reputation. Also, I did my clinical here and I had a great experience. So just think about things like that. The next question could be something like, what are your strengths? So you want to, once again, sell yourself. Tell them that you're like a fast learner, that you're dependable, you know how to manage your time wisely and prioritize, that you're a team player, stuff like that. Obviously, you don't have to say exactly what I say, just make sure you have good qualities that you can point out about yourself. As for the opposite question to that, tell me about your weaknesses. Once again, you want to put a positive spin about it. Don't just talk negatively about yourself, okay? So one way that I like to answer this question would be to say something like, I often second guess myself and overthink. But to put a positive spin on it, I would say something like, I've learned over time that I am human, so I will make mistakes, but as long as I am learning from those mistakes and decreasing the number and frequency of mistakes that I make, then I know it's okay. You have to let them know that you're learning from your weaknesses and that you're always working on them. Also, if you say something like, I overthink or second guess myself, another way to put a positive spin on it would be to let them know that you only do this because you care about your patients and their safety. Alright, so now let's get into those behavioral based questions when they may say something like, tell me about a time when blank. So for the first question I have written down, it is, tell me about a time you had a conflict with a coworker. So for this question, you don't want to talk bad about your coworker. You never want to say anything negative about yourself or other people during your interview. So you don't want to be like, oh, my coworker always had a bad attitude and she just got on my nerves. Like, don't do that, obviously. What you want to do is talk about the situation and let them know the good that came from it. You can say that you had an issue with your coworker, but you guys sat down and had a civil conversation and that everything worked out and that you learned from it. Tell me about a time you had a difficult patient. Very similar to the previous question. Don't talk bad about your patient. Just let them know what happened. So you can say something like, my example, I had a patient who was in pain and she didn't want to cooperate or talk to me, so it was really hard. But after some time, I decided to build a little rapport with her and have small talk, and then she began to open up to me and become a little more cooperative. Boom, there's your answer. Something similar to that. Tell me about a time you went beyond expectations. So just think of something. Let's see what else I have here. Tell me about a time where you had to work with a team. So you just want to let them know that you're able to work with other people, because in nursing you have to work with a lot of people. It's very necessary to have teamwork and collaborating with other people. Tell me about a time you took initiative. Tell me about a time you faced an ethical or moral dilemma. So you want to let them know that you are able to think about the pros and cons of situations and able to make the right decision. Tell me about a time you broke a rule. So for this question, once again, don't say anything stupid. Don't go on about how you went to Sephora and you stole 5 different MAC lipsticks or something like that. You just want to make it something simple like, oh, I took an extra 5 minutes on my lunch break, but I learned from it and I realized it was wrong, or something like that. Tell me about a time you faced peer pressure. Once again, you want to let them know that you're not going to succumb to peer pressure and that you're going to do the right thing. Tell me about a time you had trouble communicating with a patient. So my example that I wrote down for this one would be, once again, like a patient that was in a lot of pain and couldn't really explain what was going on. I also have written down the time I had a patient with dementia who just couldn't explain or express their feelings or thoughts. So you want to let them know how you figured out what was going on, what was wrong, and how you found a solution and found out a way to communicate with the patient. Tell me about a time you made a mistake and how you fixed it. So they want to know that you are human, that you make mistakes. They don't want anyone that's coming in thinking that they're perfect. Oh, I've never made a mistake. So just think of a mistake that you've made. So my example is how I accidentally crushed a pill, the whole pill, even though it was only supposed to be half a pill. So they know you're human, that you're going to make mistakes. So they just want to see how you're able to find solutions to your problems or mistakes. Tell me about a time you made an unpopular decision. Tell me about a time you tried to accomplish something and failed. So once again, it's just another question that shows them that you're human, that you make mistakes, but with this one, you want to also show them that you're not going to give up and that you just kept trying until you reached your goal. Tell me about a time you had to take accountability. So my example for this question would be from not nursing school, but one of my jobs in the past, a retail job. So I have my example as me accidentally breaking a new product and letting my manager know instead of trying to hide it, because honesty is the best policy. So it shows that I was able to take responsibility for my actions and that everything worked out. Tell me about a time that there was miscommunication. So just think of something and let them know that you were able to solve the problem. So each question basically has a similar theme. They just want to see how you handle things. Tell me about your worst shift. So once again, you don't want to talk bad about your patients or your coworkers. So you can say something like, we were short-staffed, so it was really hard to manage time and find help, but we made it work by doing blah, 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 blah. Tell me about a time you overcame a difficult situation. Tell me about a time you disagreed with your supervisor. So as you can see, these questions are basically just a way to see how you handle things. You just want to sell yourself and show that you can manage difficult situations and make the best out of everything. So those were just a few examples of questions that you may be asked during your interview. Like I said, even after this video, it's very important that you go Google some more questions so that you can get a wider variety of what you may see during your interview. Also, at the end of the interview, make sure you tell them thank you and that you were looking forward to hearing back from them and that you appreciate their time, stuff like that. You just want to make a very good first impression. Alright guys, so that's pretty much it for the video. That's basically how I prepared for my interviews when I was looking for my very first nursing job, and those are some examples of questions that you may be asked during your interview. So I hope that this video was beneficial in some way, and I will catch you guys in the next video. As I always say, I hope you all have a lovely day. Bye!